supporters. I'm joined now by Jean Lee, career analyst and presidential chair of the East-West Centre in Honolulu. Thank you for joining me, Jean. First of all, what did you make of that announcement on Friday and I guess the resulting stability in the country? There had been fears about what protests or what unrest could it result in.
I think South Koreans were holding their breath for that verdict and are probably relieved to have the weekend off after 4 months of protests in the street. So, this is not the first time South Korea has had such a consequential impeachment decision. Last time did result in violence. So there were police in the streets. So a lot of attention to make sure that they didn't have the kind of unrest that they've seen in the past. And I think that paid off. But I do think that after 4 months that the South Koreans wanted to take a bit of a breather because this next phase is going to be quick. It's going to be fast. Snap out presidential elections tentatively set for June 3rd. So that means we're going to start to see these political parties putting forth their candidates and that mad scramble to campaign in a very short period of time. And I will say that it's not going to be smooth sailing. It's still very polarized. You still got some of the same issues that have driven the former president's decision to declare martial law. A lot of those issues still remain. So it's still a very polarized political climate in South Korea.
We're also hearing about Woo Won-shik, the country's parliamentary speaker, proposing revising the constitution, basically to curb presidential powers in the wake of this. Do you think a referendum is likely?
It's an interesting proposal. It would need approval from a majority, 2/3 of the National Assembly, and then it would have to go to the people for a national referendum. But there's been a lot of discussion. South Korea has a one-term, 5-year presidential rule that was created to prevent authoritarianism, to prevent the dictatorships that they saw in the past. But there is some call to perhaps consider what we have in the United States, for example, 4 years with a possibility of re-election, and then also to try to find ways to mitigate the kind of polarization that we're seeing right now. So it'll be interesting to see how receptive the National Assembly is to this and whether they put it to the people for a vote on June 3rd.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the snap election June 3rd. Do we know anything about who the potential candidates might be and what the next, I guess it could be about, it's 57 days, I think, until they have to hold the election, what that might look like for South Korea?
Yeah, the decision on Friday to oust the president certainly was a blow to the ruling party, and it still remains to be seen who they're going to put forward. Meanwhile, you do have an opposition party leader who's been waiting in the wings. He narrowly lost in the last elections, but he's a complicated figure, very controversial, has faced corruption allegations. So I do think it's not very clear cut. It's not the same as it was in 2017 when we had an impeachment vote before in a snap presidential election. I think it was very clear cut then. I think it's going to be very complicated and just as contentious as we've seen over the last 4 months. So it really will be seen whether or not this opposition leader can step forward or a ruling party candidate can step forward to try to unite the country and try to bring them together to heal and get past some of this polarization.
It's certainly something we're going to have to continue to watch, and it's never over when it comes to South Korean politics. Thank you for joining me, Jean Lee, and thank you for giving us your analysis there.